Welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Perfect Illusions. Daniel Foster gripped the manila envelope in his office, his knuckles white against the paper. The corner office of Foster and Associates stood as a testament to his 20 years of dedication. Each award, each accolade marking another victory in Boston's cutthroat legal arena. Now, those same hands that had built an empire from nothing trembled slightly as he stared at the photographs spread across his desk. The surveillance team followed them for 3 weeks, Detective Maria Ramirez said, her voice carrying a mix of professional detachment and personal concern. She'd been more than just a client over the years. She'd become a trusted ally in a city where trust was a rare commodity. The photos told a story that made his blood boil. Rebecca, his wife of 18 years, entering the private practice of Dr. James Morrison. The timestamp showed visits far too frequent for mere tennis lessons. Then there were the intimate dinners, the stolen touches, the secret meetings at high-end hotels. "Tell me everything," Daniel commanded, his voice carrying the same authority that had made him feared in courtrooms across Massachusetts. Maria leaned forward, her experienced detective's eyes studying his reaction. "Morrison's got a pattern, Daniel. He's selective, targets successful women, usually through his practice. Your wife isn't his first, and she won't be his last." Daniel cut in, his tone glacial. "Continue." He presents himself as the perfect gentleman, educated, cultured, understanding. The kind of man who listens. Maria's disgust was evident. Rebecca started seeing him professionally about 14 months ago. The tennis lessons began 2 months later, a convenient cover for their meetings. Daniel's mind raced through the past year. The subtle changes in Rebecca's behavior, the late-night tennis sessions, the new clothes, the sudden interest in therapy. All the pieces falling into place with devastating clarity. "The money?" he asked, already knowing the answer. Maria passed him another document. "Offshore accounts." She's been systematic about it. Small transfers at first, then larger sums as she grew bolder. $2 million, Daniel. She's been planning this for months. The betrayal cut deep. He remembered the early days, Rebecca working double shifts as a nurse, supporting his dream of starting his own firm. They'd eaten ramen noodles in their tiny apartment, dreaming of the future they'd build together. Now she was dismantling that future piece by piece. "There's something else." Maria hesitated, unusual for her. "Morrison's been building a narrative. He's been speaking to your colleagues, your friends, even Judge Blackwood." Daniel's jaw clenched. Catherine Blackwood was one of the most respected judges in Boston. Her opinion carried weight. "What kind of narrative?" "He's painting you as controlling, potentially violent, using his professional credentials to give weight to his concerns about Rebecca's safety." Maria's expression darkened. "It's calculated, Daniel. They're setting the stage for something bigger." The intercom buzzed, interrupting them. "Mr. Foster, your children are here for lunch," his secretary announced. Daniel pressed the button. "Send them in?" He quickly gathered the photos, sliding them back into the envelope. "How much time do I have?" Maria stood, understanding the question's deeper meaning. "A few weeks, maybe less. They're moving carefully, but they're getting ready to strike." The office door opened, revealing Amy and Josh, his 17-year-old twins. Once upon a time, they would have rushed to hug him. Now they stood awkwardly in the doorway, their smiles not quite reaching their eyes. "Dad," Amy said, her voice carrying a hint of rehearsed politeness. "Mom said we should remind you about the charity gala this weekend." "The Museum of Fine Arts event," Josh added, barely making eye contact. "Dr. Morrison mentioned you might be too busy to attend." Daniel felt his rage crystallize into something cold and sharp. "Dr. Morrison mentioned that, did he?" He kept his voice neutral. "How thoughtful of him to be concerned about my schedule." Maria nodded slightly to Daniel as she headed for the door. "Think about what we discussed, Mr. Foster. And remember, time is critical." After she left, Daniel gestured to the chairs across from his desk. "Tell me about school," he said to his children, watching them carefully. Their body language, their careful responses, the way they seemed to measure each word. it all spoke volumes. They were slipping away from him, piece by piece, and now he understood why. Rebecca hadn't just been stealing his money. She'd been stealing his children's hearts, turning them against him. As he listened to their stilted conversation, Daniel Foster made a decision. He'd built his reputation by being thorough, ruthless, and most importantly, by never losing. Rebecca and Morrison had declared war, but they had no idea what kind of enemy they'd created. He would give them exactly what they expected, the controlled, successful lawyer concerned about his family. And when the time came, when they thought they had him cornered, he would show them exactly why Boston's most powerful people feared ending up on his bad side. "Dad?" Amy's voice broke through his thoughts. "Are you listening?" "Always, sweetheart." He smiled, the expression not touching his eyes. "I'm always listening." The lunch continued, a perfect performance of family normalcy. But beneath the surface, Daniel Foster was already planning his counterattack. They wanted to destroy him? He would teach them the true meaning of destruction. After the twins left, he picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "Maria? I need everything you can find on Morrison." "Everything." He paused, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "And Maria? No limits. No restrictions. Whatever it takes." The detective's response was immediate. "I'll have a preliminary report by tonight." "And Daniel? Be careful. People who feel cornered make mistakes." "I'm not the one who should be worried about making mistakes," he replied, ending the call. Daniel stood at his office window, watching his children walk away. Soon, Rebecca would make her move. Soon, Morrison would play his part in their carefully orchestrated destruction of his life. And when they did, they would learn a valuable lesson about the man they'd chosen to betray. Daniel Foster didn't get mad. He got even, and when he got even, he made sure his enemies never recovered. Chapter 2. The Unraveling. The Boston Museum of Fine Arts glittered with the city's elite, their jewelry catching the light from crystal chandeliers. Daniel Foster adjusted his bow tie, watching the crowd with predatory attention. Rebecca stood across the room, radiant in a black designer dress he'd never seen before. Dr. James Morrison hovered nearby, playing his role of concerned friend perfectly. "Daniel," Judge Catherine Blackwood approached, champagne in hand. "I've been meaning to speak with you." He turned, offering a practice smile. "Catherine, how are you?" "Concerned, actually." She lowered her voice. "I've been hearing things, troubling things." Daniel followed her gaze to where Morrison was now speaking with a group of influential lawyers. "Have you now? From reliable sources, I assume?" "Dr. Morrison has an excellent reputation," Catherine said carefully. "When someone of his standing expresses concern about a colleague's home situation." "How interesting." Daniel's voice remained steady. "And what exactly has the good doctor been saying?" Before she could respond, Rebecca appeared at his side. "Daniel, darling," her voice dripped honey, but her eyes were cold. "Dr. Morrison was just telling everyone about that wonderful charity he's involved with. The one helping victims of domestic abuse." The trap was so obvious it was almost amusing. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "How admirable. Though I wonder why a tennis instructor is so invested in domestic abuse cases." Rebecca's smile flickered. "James has many interests. Unlike some people, he doesn't live solely for his work." "James?" Catherine Blackwood looked between them. "I thought he was your therapist?" "Tennis instructor," Daniel corrected smoothly. "Though apparently he's quite versatile. Tennis, therapy, domestic abuse advocacy. One might wonder how he finds time for it all." Rebecca's hand tightened on her champagne glass. "James is a remarkable man. He actually listens when people talk to him." "Indeed." Daniel's voice could have frozen hell. "Judge Blackwood, would you excuse us? My wife and I need to discuss something privately." They found an empty balcony, away from prying eyes. The moment they were alone, Rebecca's mask slipped. "You're making a scene," she hissed. "People are already talking about your behavior." "Are they?" Daniel leaned against the railing. "And what exactly are they saying, Rebecca? That I'm controlling? Aggressive? Unstable? It must be convenient, having a psychiatrist ready to validate every accusation." "You don't understand anything," she spat. "You never did. 20 years of marriage, and you still don't see me." "Oh, I see you perfectly now," he replied. The offshore accounts. The careful manipulation of our children. The whispered rumors about my anger issues. Tell me, how long have you and Morrison been planning this? Rebecca's face paled slightly before she recovered. I don't know what you're talking about. $2 million, he said softly. That's what you've moved so far. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? I'm a lawyer, Rebecca. Following money trails is what I do. You're paranoid. She tried to step past him. This is exactly what James warned me about. Daniel caught her arm, his grip firm but careful. No bruises for Morrison to document. James? Your tennis instructor? Or James Moretti, the man who lost his medical license in California? This time, the flash of fear in her eyes was unmistakable. You're hurting me? No. He released her immediately. But I will hurt you. Not physically. I'm not the monster you're trying to paint me as. But when this is over, you'll wish you'd never heard the name James Morrison. The children will never forgive you, she said, her voice shaking slightly. They already know what you are. What you've told them I am, he corrected. But lies have a way of unraveling, Rebecca. You should remember that. He left her on the balcony, returning to the party with a pleasant smile fixed in place. As he passed Morrison, he caught the man's eye. Wonderful party, isn't it? Daniel said loudly enough for others to hear. We should play tennis sometime, Doctor. I hear you're quite the instructor. Morrison's confident smile wavered slightly. Perhaps when things are calmer. Oh, I don't think things will be calm for quite a while, Daniel replied, his voice carrying just a hint of threat. But then, you're used to chaos, aren't you? It must have been quite chaotic in California. He walked away before Morrison could respond, leaving the other man staring after him with sudden uncertainty. The next morning, Daniel arrived home to find Rebecca in their study, methodically destroying old photo albums. Family vacations, birthday parties, moments of genuine happiness, all being shredded into confetti. Destroying evidence? He asked from the doorway. James thinks you might become violent when I file for divorce. She didn't look up. Everyone's quite worried about my safety. Everyone, he stepped into the room. Or just your tennis instructor turned therapist? He understands me. Rebecca finally met his gaze. He sees what living with you has done to me. What living with me has done. Daniel picked up a torn photograph. The four of them at the twins' 16th birthday. I gave you everything. A home, a family, a life most people only dream of. And you're throwing it away for a con man? A con man? She laughed bitterly. You're the one who's been conning everyone. The successful lawyer, the perfect husband, the devoted father. It's all an act. Projection is a fascinating thing, he mused. Tell me, when did you start believing your own lies? When did you convince yourself I was the villain in your story? You want to talk about lies? Rebecca stood, her hands shaking. How about the lies you told me when we met? About wanting a partner, not just a trophy wife? About building a life together? You built your empire, Daniel. I just happened to be decorative enough to display at parties. Is that what Morrison told you? Daniel's voice was dangerously soft. Did he help you rewrite our entire history? Did he explain how moving $2 million offshore was justified because you felt decorative? You're trying to manipulate me. She backed away. James warned me you'd do this. James seems to warn you about a lot of things. Daniel moved toward the door. I wonder what he warns his other women about. Or did you think you were special? Rebecca's face contorted. Get out. Just get out. This is my house, he reminded her calmly. But don't worry. You'll be leaving soon enough. And when you do, when Morrison has taken everything you stole from me and moved on to his next target, remember this moment. Remember that I tried to warn you. He left her there, surrounded by the shredded remnants of their life together. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with a text from Maria. Found something big. Meet me in an hour. Daniel smiled. The game was entering its final phase, and he was just getting started. Chapter 3, Rock Bottom. The courtroom fell silent as Amy Foster took the stand. Daniel watched his daughter smooth her skirt with trembling hands, her eyes carefully avoiding his. Rebecca sat at the plaintiff's table, the picture of a concerned mother, while Morrison lurked in the gallery, his professional mask firmly in place. Miss Foster, Rebecca's lawyer began, can you describe your father's behavior over the past year? Amy glanced at her mother, then at Morrison before speaking. He changed. He became unpredictable. Sometimes he'd be fine, but other times, she paused, tears welling up. I started being afraid to be alone with him. Daniel felt each word like a physical blow, but his face remained impassive. Next to him, his lawyer scribbled notes, preparing for cross-examination. "Can you give us specific examples?" the lawyer prompted. "Once, when I got home late from debate practice," Amy's voice shook. "He started yelling about responsibility and respect. He knocked over a lamp. I'd never seen him so angry." The incident she described had never happened. Daniel remembered that night. He'd been working late at the office, dealing with a crucial case. The fabrication was perfect, just detailed enough to be believable while vague enough to be unverifiable. "And how did this make you feel?" "Scared," Amy whispered. "I started making sure Josh was with me whenever I had to talk to him." "We both did." In the gallery, Josh sat with his head down, shoulders hunched. He hadn't even agreed to testify. Amy's performance was apparently enough. The questioning continued, each answer more devastating than the last. Daniel recognized Rebecca's coaching in every word, Morrison's psychological manipulation in every carefully crafted response. They'd done their work well. During the brief recess, Daniel stood in the courthouse bathroom, staring at his reflection. The man looking back at him seemed older, harder. His phone buzzed, another text from Maria, "Stay strong. The truth will come out." But would it come out in time? The damage was already extensive. That morning, 3 major clients had pulled their business from his firm. Partners were getting nervous, distancing themselves from the scandal. His reputation, built over decades of hard work, was crumbling. The afternoon session brought Morrison to the stand. The psychiatrist played his role perfectly, presenting himself as a concerned professional who had observed troubling patterns. "In my professional opinion," Morrison testified, adjusting his glasses, "Mr. Foster exhibits classic signs of narcissistic personality disorder with underlying aggressive tendencies." "And how did you come to this conclusion?" Rebecca's lawyer asked. "Through my observations during Mrs. Foster's tennis lessons, and subsequently during our therapeutic sessions." Morrison's voice carried just the right note of clinical concern. The controlling behavior, the financial manipulation, the emotional abuse, it all fits a clear pattern. Daniel's lawyer objected, pointing out that Morrison had never treated Daniel professionally, but the damage was done. The judge's expression said it all. Morrison's reputation and credentials carried weight. The final blow came with the financial disclosure hearing. Rebecca's lawyer presented evidence of Daniel's financial abuse. Joint accounts he'd supposedly controlled, investments he'd allegedly hidden. The irony of Rebecca accusing him of financial manipulation while she sat on offshore millions was almost enough to make him laugh. The judge's ruling was devastating, but not unexpected. Rebecca received primary custody of the twins, substantial alimony, and a significant portion of their shared assets. Daniel sat stoically as Judge Catherine Blackwood delivered her verdict, each word another nail in the coffin of his former life. Given the testimony presented and the expert's psychological evaluation, Judge Blackwood stated, her earlier friendship with Daniel, now buried under Morrison's carefully crafted lies. This court finds compelling evidence of a pattern of controlling behavior and emotional abuse. Daniel watched Rebecca's performance. The perfectly timed dabbing of eyes with a tissue, the slight trembling of hands, the grateful glances toward Morrison. She practiced this moment, rehearsed every gesture until it read as authentic pain rather than calculated victory. The aftermath was swift and merciless. By evening, 3 more major clients had withdrawn their business. His phone buzzed constantly with partners demanding emergency meetings. The vultures were circling, eager to pick apart the firm he'd built from nothing. In his office, Daniel poured himself a drink as a senior partner. Thomas Chun delivered the final blow. "The board has called an emergency meeting," Thomas said, unable to meet Daniel's eyes. "Given the publicity, the allegations, they're invoking the morality clause in the partnership agreement." "You mean they want me out?" Daniel's voice was flat. "They're offering a buyout, significantly below market value. But given the circumstances," Thomas shifted uncomfortably. Daniel, you need to understand, the firm can't survive this kind of publicity. Clients are fleeing. The Bar Association is making noise about an ethics investigation. Daniel swirled the amber liquid in his glass. 20 years, Thomas. I built this firm from nothing. You were there. Remember our first office? That converted storage space on Beacon Street. Times change, Thomas replied softly. People change. The Daniel Foster I knew. The Daniel Foster you knew was a facade. He cut in sharply. A mask I wore to play the game. Well, now the mask is off. After Thomas left, Daniel sat alone in his darkening office. On his desk, a photo lay face down, him and Rebecca at the firm's 20th anniversary celebration, both smiling, both lying. He picked up his phone, scrolling through old messages from his children. The last one from Josh was 3 months old. A terse, can't make it, response to an invitation to their usual weekend basketball game. The drive to his new apartment was a study in loss. He passed their old house, now solely Rebecca's domain, lights blazing as though celebrating his exile. The apartment complex was decent enough. His name still carried enough weight to bypass credit checks, but it was a far cry from the life he'd built. Inside, he poured another drink. The whiskey bottle was running low, matching his spirits. The walls seemed to close in, memories of his children's laughter turning to ash in his mind. How had it come to this? How had he lost everything so completely? His phone buzzed again. Probably another partner jumping ship, or maybe a reporter hungry for comment on his spectacular fall from grace. But the name on the screen made him pause. Maria Ramirez. Found something? Meet tomorrow. Don't give up. Daniel stared at the message for a long moment. The whiskey bottle beckoned, promising oblivion, an escape from the wreckage of his life. It would be so easy to give in, to let the darkness take him. Instead, he set his glass down untouched. Maria had found something, a thread to pull, a crack in Morrison's perfect facade. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to keep him from the edge, enough to kindle the cold fire of revenge that had been building since that first manila envelope. He walked to the window, looking out at the city he'd once commanded. Tomorrow, he would meet with Maria. Tomorrow, he would begin planning his resurrection. But tonight, he allowed himself to feel the full weight of his loss, his children, his wife, his firm, his reputation. He let the pain wash over him, knowing it would soon transmute into something far more dangerous. Rebecca and Morrison thought they'd destroy Daniel Foster. They thought they'd reduced him to this, a broken man in a bare apartment, stripped of everything that mattered. But they'd made a crucial mistake. They'd left him alive. They'd left him with nothing to lose. In the darkness of his new reality, Daniel Foster made a promise to himself. This wasn't rock bottom. This was merely the foundation upon which he would build his revenge. Chapter 4: Gathering Storm. Daniel Foster's apartment buzzed with tension as Maria Ramirez spread documents across his kitchen table. The space, though modest, had transformed into a war room over the past weeks. Maps, photographs, and financial records covered walls where family pictures once hung. James Morrison is a ghost, Maria said, tapping a California medical license. But James Moretti? He left quite a trail. Daniel leaned forward, examining the document. Tell me. 3 previous marriages, all to wealthy women. Maria pulled out more files. Sarah Henderson, divorced 2015. Patricia Mills, divorced 2018. Elizabeth Chun, divorced 2021. See the pattern? Professional women, substantial assets, Daniel noted, his lawyer's mind cataloging details. What happened to their money? Maria's smile turned predatory. Vanished. Offshore accounts, property transfers, investment schemes. By the time they realized what happened, Morrison, or should I say Moretti, was gone. And the California license? Revoked after a patient's death in 2014. Andrea Torres, 32, successful tech executive. Official ruling was suicide, but Maria paused, pulling out a police report. The investigating officer had doubts. Torres had discovered Moretti's pattern of targeting wealthy patients. She threatened to expose him. Daniel absorbed the information, his expression hardening. The malpractice suits? 5 in total, all settled quietly, with strict confidentiality agreements. Maria passed him another file. But I found something interesting. The settlements were paid through a series of shell companies. The same companies that later received transfers from his ex-wife's accounts. He used their own money to silence his victims. Daniel's voice carried grudging admiration for the scheme's complexity. Clever. That's not all. Maria reached for the final folder. Remember Karen Walsh? Daniel looked up sharply. Karen had been Rebecca's closest friend, until their mysterious falling out 6 months ago. What about her? She came to me yesterday. She's ready to talk. Maria leaned back, watching Daniel's reaction. Seems she caught Morrison making a very interesting phone call. Something about moving the timeline up and making the transfer before anyone notices. Daniel stood, pacing the small space. Karen was Rebecca's confidant. She would have known everything. Better yet, Maria added, she kept records. Texts, emails, recorded conversations. She didn't trust Morrison from the start. Why didn't she come forward during the divorce? Fear. Maria shrugged. Morrison threatened her. Implied her own psychiatric history might become public. But now, she gestured to the evidence spread before them. She's seen enough to know he's going to destroy Rebecca just like the others. Daniel picked up the California license again, studying the man's younger face. The expert testimony he gave in court would be completely inadmissible, Maria finished. He's not licensed in Massachusetts. Never was. He's been practicing illegally for years. A plan began forming in Daniel's mind. We need more. Former patients, staff members, anyone who might have suspected something wasn't right. Already on it, Maria pulled out her phone, showing him a list of names. 3 former receptionists agreed to talk, and 2 patients from his California practice reached out after seeing his name in the Boston papers. Daniel's hand tightened on the edge of the table. Morrison thinks he's destroyed me, that I'm finished. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. But he's just given me everything I need to destroy him. What's our next move? First, we verify everything. Documents, witnesses, money trails. I want it all bulletproof. Daniel's legal training took over. Then we start putting pressure points in place. Anonymous tips to the right people. Whispers in the right ears. And Rebecca? Daniel's expression turned cold. Rebecca made her choice. She chose to believe Morrison over 20 years of marriage. She chose to turn our children against me. When Morrison falls, she falls with him. Speaking of the children, Maria hesitated. There might be a way to show them the truth. Morrison's been careless lately. Getting too confident. Explain. He's been seeing another woman. A judge's wife. Maria showed him surveillance photos. Same pattern, private sessions, tennis lessons, secret meetings. But this time we caught it early. Daniel studied the photos, a grim satisfaction settling over him. Perfect. He's already moving on, and Rebecca doesn't even know it. What about your firm? Let them think they've won. Daniel's voice carried absolute certainty. Let them believe Daniel Foster is finished. When the time comes, they'll learn what it means to betray me. The buzz of Daniel's phone interrupted them. A text from Karen Walsh. Need to meet. It's about the children. Morrison's been lying to them too. Daniel showed Maria the message. Set up the meeting. Somewhere private. You think she's reliable? She's afraid, Daniel replied. Fear makes people reliable. And if she's lying, his voice hardened. She'll learn what happens to people who cross me. Maria gathered the documents, organizing them with practiced efficiency. I'll keep digging. Morrison's made enemies. They just needed someone strong enough to stand up to him. He chose the wrong target, Daniel stated flatly. He thought I was just another rich husband he could destroy. By the time I'm done, he'll wish he'd never heard the name Foster. As Maria left, Daniel returned to the evidence wall. Each piece of paper represented another nail in Morrison's coffin. Another step toward reclaiming everything that had been taken from him. His phone buzzed again. An email from Thomas Chun, his former partner. Daniel, the board is reconsidering their position. Call me? Daniel smiled. The whispers were already starting. The storm he'd been gathering was about to break, and no one, not Morrison, not Rebecca, not even his own partners, was prepared for the devastation it would bring. Chapter 5, The Alliance. The bar association meeting hummed with pretentious conversation and barely concealed ambition. Daniel stood near the entrance, noting how his former colleagues now avoided his gaze. All except one. Sophia Richardson approached him directly, her confidence unmistakable. Tom had been kind to his high school sweetheart, her dark hair now streaked with silver, her face lined with experience rather than age. "Daniel Foster," she said, extending her hand. "Still fighting the good fight?" "Sophia." He clasped her hand, remembering their shared past. "I heard you were back in Boston. Forensic accounting now." Among other things, her smile held a hint of steel. "Buy me coffee? We should talk about your wife's financial activities." They found a quiet corner in an upscale cafe, away from prying ears. Sophia spread printouts across the table, her expertise evident in each precise movement. "Rebecca's money transfers?" She tapped one document. "Amateur hour. She's working with someone who thinks offshore accounts still mean the Cayman Islands." Daniel leaned forward. "Tell me, shell companies, wire transfers, all traceable." Sophia's fingers traced the paper trail. "Your wife's been sloppy, but her partner, he's used these same structures before." "Morrison." "James Moretti," Sophia corrected, pulling out more documents. "I recognize the pattern. My ex-husband lost everything to someone using the same methods. Different name, same game." Understanding dawned. "That's why you approached me." "Partially," she admitted. "But mostly because I remember who you were, Daniel. The boy who refused to lose, who turned down Harvard Law's full scholarship because Boston University offered better trial advocacy programs. That boy grew up," Daniel's voice carried years of hard lessons, "into exactly the man I expected," Sophia replied. "Someone who doesn't break when hit. Someone who hits back harder." She pulled out another file, this one thicker than the others. "Morrison's financial history is fascinating. Each ex-wife's assets followed the same path. Transferred through series of front companies, then disappeared into private accounts. But he made mistakes. Got greedy. Show me." "Here," she pointed to a transaction record. "He used the same bank in Singapore for 3 different transfers. Different company names, same routing numbers. Amateur mistake." Daniel studied the documents, his legal mind connecting dots. "Can you trace the money?" "Already did." Sophia's smile turned predatory. "Your wife's $2 million? Half of it's already moving into Morrison's personal accounts. He's not even waiting for the divorce to be final. Rebecca doesn't know. She thinks the money's safe in their joint holdings. Morrison convinced her it was necessary to protect their future." Sophia's laugh held no humor. Same line he fed all the others. Daniel sat back, watching Sophia work. She had always been brilliant, even in high school. Now that brilliance was honed by experience and hardened by betrayal. "Why are you really helping me, Sophia?" She met his gaze directly. "Because men like Morrison, like my ex-husband, they think they're untouchable. They think money and charm make them invincible." Her voice hardened. "I want to prove them wrong." "It won't be easy," Daniel warned. "Morrison has influence. Connections." "So do we," Sophia countered. "Your legal expertise, my financial forensics, Maria's investigative skills. We're not exactly helpless." She pulled out one final document. "There's something else. Morrison's been making regular payments to someone inside the Massachusetts Medical Board. That's how he's avoided detection so long." Daniel's expression sharpened. "Names?" "Better." Sophia handed him a USB drive. "Account numbers, dates, amounts. Everything needed to prove corruption." "This is dynamite." Daniel pocketed the drive. "If this gets out." "When it gets out," Sophia corrected. "Timing is everything. We release this right as the other pieces fall into place." "Morrison loses his protection," Daniel finished. "The board will have to investigate to save themselves." "Exactly. But there's more." Sophia hesitated. "Your children?" "Morrison's been manipulating them directly. Not just through Rebecca." Daniel's hands clenched. "Explain." "He's been conducting unauthorized therapy sessions, using techniques banned by the APA for being potentially traumatic to adolescents. I found billing records, session notes. He's been experimenting on my children." Daniel's voice could have frozen fire. "Testing new manipulation methods," Sophia confirmed. "The notes are disturbing. He sees them as case studies in parental alienation. Daniel stood abruptly, his control threatening to snap. Sophia caught his arm. Wait, we do this right, we destroy him completely. Rush it, he might slip away. He forced himself to sit. What's our next move? First, we document everything. Build an airtight case. Sophia's professional mask slipped, showing her own anger. Then we take it all. The financial fraud, the medical board corruption, the unauthorized practices. We create a tsunami he can't escape. And Rebecca? Sophia's expression hardened. She made her choices. The evidence shows she was a willing participant, not a victim. When Morrison falls, she falls with him. They spent hours planning, plotting each move. As night fell, Sophia gathered her documents. Daniel, she paused. Remember that debate tournament senior year? When everyone said you couldn't win? He nodded, remembering the competition that had helped launch his legal career. You didn't just win. You destroyed the opposition, so completely they quit debate. Sophia's smile held fierce approval. That's the Daniel Foster I remember. That's the Daniel Foster Morrison should have feared. As she left, Daniel's phone lit up with a message from Maria. Meeting set with Karen Walsh. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. You need to see what she has. The pieces were falling into place. Morrison had built his empire on lies, charm, and stolen money. Now that empire would crumble, brick by brick, destroyed by the very skills that had built Daniel's success. Chapter 6, Counterstrike. The medical board's anonymous tip line received the first document at exactly 9 a.m. By 9:15, 3 major Boston newspapers had copies of James Morrison's California license revocation. At 9:30, evidence of his fraudulent Massachusetts credentials hit social media. Daniel watched from his temporary office as the storm broke. Karen Walsh had proven to be a gold mine of information, her meticulous record-keeping driven by a mixture of suspicion and self-preservation. The phones haven't stopped ringing, Maria reported, entering with fresh coffee. 3 more of Morrison's former patients came forward. 2 from California, 1 from Chicago. Same pattern. Wealthy women, suspicious losses. What about the board insider? Rolled over the moment we presented the evidence. He's willing to testify about Morrison's bribes in exchange for immunity. Daniel nodded, scanning the morning news feeds. Morrison's name dominated the headlines, each story more damaging than the last. Any response from his office? Closed for personal emergency. Maria's smile held satisfaction. But our surveillance shows he's been making calls all morning. Lots of calls. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Foster? Judge Blackwood is here. Daniel straightened his tie. Show her in. Catherine Blackwood entered, her judicial authority somewhat diminished by her obvious distress. Daniel, these allegations about Dr. Morrison, not allegations, Catherine. Facts. He gestured to the chair across from him. Would you like to see the evidence? She sat heavily. I endorsed him. Used my influence to support his testimony. You were deceived. Daniel kept his voice neutral. Like many others, the divorce ruling, she began, was based on fraudulent expert testimony, Daniel finished. From a man practicing medicine without a license, using credentials he purchased through bribes. He slid a file across the desk. This contains everything: the California license revocation, the death of Andrea Torres, the pattern of targeting wealthy women. You'll want to review it before the press starts asking questions about your role in all this. Catherine's hand trembled slightly as she opened the file. My God, the therapy sessions with your children were illegal and unauthorized. Daniel's voice turned dangerous. He manipulated them, Catherine. Used techniques banned for being psychologically damaging to minors. I'll need to recuse myself, she said, reading further. And issue a statement. Of course, Daniel agreed smoothly. Your public apology, acknowledging you were deceived by Morrison's credentials, would carry significant weight. She looked up sharply. You planned this? I planned justice, he corrected. Morrison destroyed lives, Catherine. Not just mine. Ask his former wives. Ask Andrea Torres's family. As if on cue, his phone buzzed with a news alert. Another former patient had come forward, this one armed with recordings of Morrison discussing his financial schemes. It's going to get worse, isn't it? Catherine asked. Much worse, Daniel confirmed. By the end of the day, the FBI will receive evidence of money laundering through interstate wire transfers. The DEA will get proof he prescribed controlled substances without a valid license. And Rebecca? Daniel's expression hardened. Rebecca made her choices. The evidence shows she was a willing participant in the fraud. Catherine stood, clutching the file. I'll issue my statement this afternoon. And Daniel, I'm sorry. About the divorce ruling. Actions have consequences, he replied simply. Morrison learned that today. Others will learn it soon. After she left, Sophia arrived with fresh financial data. Morrison's trying to move money, she reported. His accounts are frozen faster than he can open them. What about Rebecca's offshore accounts? Already flagged for suspicious activity. She tried to access them this morning, denied. Daniel's phone buzzed again. A text from Josh. Dad, we need to talk. About Dr. Morrison. The children are figuring it out. He showed Sophia the message. Morrison's manipulation is unraveling. Good timing, she replied. We just found his notes about their therapy sessions. Amy's going to want to see these. The day continued, each hour bringing new revelations. Morrison's carefully constructed facade crumbled under the weight of evidence, witness testimony, and documented fraud. By evening, the FBI had opened a formal investigation. Morrison's office was sealed, his records seized. Former patients were speaking to reporters, sharing stories of manipulation and financial ruin. Daniel received another text, this one from Thomas Chun. Emergency board meeting tomorrow. We need to discuss your return. They're running scared, Maria observed, bringing more files. Your former partners see which way the wind's blowing. Let them wait, Daniel replied. First, we finish Morrison. The final piece fell into place at midnight. An anonymous source provided Boston's largest newspaper with evidence of Morrison's affair with Judge Harriet Maxwell's wife. The photos, text messages, and bank transfers painted a familiar pattern. Morrison had already begun isolating Sarah Maxwell from her family and friends. This ends his influence in the courts, Maria noted, reviewing the evidence before it went to press. Judge Maxwell sits on the medical licensing board. Daniel's phone rang, Amy's number flashing on the screen. His daughter's voice trembled with a mixture of confusion and anger. Dad, I found something in Dr. Morrison's office. During my last session, she paused. There are files about us. About me and Josh. Notes about something called induced trauma response. Where are you now? Daniel kept his voice steady. Home. Mom's not here. She's been at Dr. Morrison's office all day, trying to... Amy's voice broke. Dad, did he really lose his license in California? After a patient died? Come to my office, Daniel said firmly. Bring Josh. There are things you both need to see. Within an hour, his children sat before him, looking far younger than their 17 years. Daniel placed Morrison's therapy notes on the desk between them. He was experimenting on you, Daniel explained, his control ironclad, using banned psychological techniques to turn you against me. These are his session notes. Josh picked up a page, his hands shaking. Subject shows increasing response to negative paternal associations, he read. Implanted memories taking hold. He looked up at his father. He made us think. He manipulated you. Daniel kept his voice gentle. Both of you. It's a technique called forced memory implantation. It's illegal in therapeutic practice. Amy was reading another document. The lamp. She whispered. The night I testified about you breaking the lamp. It never happened, did it? No, Daniel confirmed. Morrison helped you construct that memory. He did the same thing to his patients in California. Mom knew. Josh asked, his voice hard. Daniel slid another file forward. Rebecca's emails to Morrison, planning their sessions. She approved the treatments. The twins absorbed this in silence. Finally, Amy spoke. What happens now? Now, Daniel stood, moving to the window. Morrison faces the consequences of his actions. The FBI is investigating him for fraud. The DEA for prescribing medications without a license. His former patients are filing lawsuits. And Mom, Josh's question cut like a blade. Your mother made her choices. Daniel's voice carried finality. She chose to believe Morrison. Chose to help him manipulate you. chose to steal and hide money. Those choices have consequences. Amy wiped tears from her face. All those things I said in court, I really believe them. That wasn't your fault, Daniel assured her. Morrison is skilled at what he does. He's done this before, to other families. Josh stood abruptly. I want to make a new statement. To the court. Tell them the truth. Me too, Amy added firmly. Daniel nodded. When you're ready. But first, I want you both to meet with legitimate therapists, specialists in dealing with this kind of manipulation. Their discussion was interrupted by Maria's arrival. It's done, she announced. The story breaks in tomorrow's paper. Judge Maxwell's already issued a statement distancing himself from Morrison. The medical board is convening an emergency session. Daniel's phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Rebecca trying to access more accounts. All blocked. She's panicking. The pieces were in place. Morrison's empire of lies was crumbling, taking Rebecca down with it. Daniel looked at his children, seeing the truth dawning in their eyes. The damage Morrison had done was deep, but not irreparable. Stay here tonight, he told them. Both of you. Tomorrow's going to be difficult. After they left with Maria to get their things, Daniel stood in his office, surveying the evidence of Morrison's destruction. The photos, the files, the financial records, each piece a weapon in the arsenal he'd built. Sophia found him there, working late into the night. The morning papers will destroy him, she said softly. Are you ready for what comes next? Daniel turned to her, his expression resolute. I've been ready since the day he took my children from me. His phone lit up with one final message from Rebecca. We need to talk. Please. James is acting strange. I'm scared. Daniel didn't reply. Let her be scared. Let her feel a fraction of what he'd felt when she'd turned their children against him. Tomorrow would bring the reckoning she'd earned. As midnight approached, Boston slept, unaware of the storm about to break. In his office, Daniel Foster prepared for the next phase of his plan. Morrison had started this war, but Daniel would end it. And when the dust settled, everyone would understand the price of betraying Daniel Foster. Chapter 7. The Fall of House Morrison. The morning news blasted across Boston like a shockwave. Prominent psychiatrist James Morrison exposed as fraud. Daniel Foster watched the coverage from his office, his expression revealing nothing as Morrison's empire crumbled in real time. The FBI just raided his office, Maria reported, striding in with fresh intel. They found everything: fake credentials, illegal prescriptions, financial records. He tried deleting files, but our tech team already had copies. What about his escape plan? Maria's smile turned predatory. The private jet he booked to Brazil? Grounded. Anonymous tip to the FBI about potential flight risk. They're watching airports, train stations, and his yacht. Daniel's phone buzzed, Rebecca calling for the 5th time that morning. He ignored it, focusing instead on the live news feed, showing FBI agents carrying boxes from Morrison's practice. Sir, his secretary's voice came through the intercom. Dr. Morrison's wife is here. Sarah Maxwell. Send her in. Sarah Maxwell entered, her usual judicial composure shattered. You knew, she accused. You knew what he was planning. I tried to warn you, Daniel replied calmly. 3 weeks ago, when I showed you the evidence of his previous marriages, you chose not to believe me. He said you were bitter, trying to destroy him out of revenge. She sank into a chair. I gave him access to my accounts. $10 million, Mr. Foster. My entire inheritance. The money's already frozen, he informed her. Sophia tracked it to an account in Singapore. You'll get it back. Why? Sarah's voice cracked. Why help me when I didn't believe you? Because Morrison doesn't get to win. Not with you. Not with anyone else. Daniel's tone carried absolute finality. Not anymore. His phone buzzed again. This time a text from Josh. Dad, Mom's trying to access the house safe. Says she needs documents. She's looking for leverage, Maria noted. Something to trade? She won't find it, Daniel replied. Everything she thinks is important was replaced months ago. The real documents are secure. The office TV showed new footage. Morrison being led from his home in handcuffs, his practice charm cracking as reporters shouted questions. Mr. Morrison, is it true you're not licensed to practice? What about Andrea Torres's death in California? Did you deliberately target wealthy women? Are the allegations about illegal prescriptions true? Morrison's face contorted with rage as he was pushed into an FBI vehicle. The mask of sophisticated professionalism finally shattered completely. "You're doing?" Maria asked. "The reporters received anonymous packets this morning," Daniel confirmed. "Complete dossiers on each victim, including Sarah. They'll be busy for months." His phone lit up with another call, Judge Catherine Blackwood. "Daniel? I've just issued a statement recusing myself from all cases involving Morrison and formally withdrawing my endorsement. The Bar Association wants to meet. Send them to my office," he instructed. "I have something they need to see." The day unfolded like a perfectly orchestrated symphony of destruction. Each hour brought new revelations, each one carefully timed for maximum impact. Breaking news. Dr. James Morrison's real identity revealed. James Moretti, failed California psychiatrist. Multiple victims come forward in Morrison fraud case. Medical board launches emergency investigation. FBI probes Morrison's interstate financial crimes. Rebecca's desperate calls continued until mid-afternoon when she finally appeared at his office unannounced. "You have to help me," she demanded, her designer outfit wrinkled, her composure cracking. "James is saying I knew everything. He's lying." Daniel regarded her silently, remembering the woman who had once worked double shifts to support his dreams. That woman was gone, replaced by this desperate stranger. "The offshore accounts are frozen," he said finally. "The ones you thought were secret?" Morrison already transferred half the money to his personal holdings. "The rest is evidence in a federal investigation." "You don't understand." Rebecca's voice rose. "He has documents, things I signed." "Of course he does. That was always his plan. Build evidence against you while stealing your money." Daniel's smile held no warmth. "Ask his previous wives. They'll tell you exactly how it works." "I'll lose everything," she whispered. "Yes," he agreed. "You will. The house, the money, your freedom when the tax evasion charges hit. But most importantly, you'll lose the children. They won't believe his lies about me." Rebecca straightened, finding a last shred of defiance. "They already know the truth. About the therapy sessions, the manipulation, your role in all of it." Daniel stood, his height suddenly imposing. "They found Morrison's notes, Rebecca, about the induced trauma response techniques he used on them. With your written approval." The color drained from her face. "That's not. I didn't know." "You knew exactly what you were doing. You helped him turn our children against me. Made them believe lies about their father." His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "That's something I'll never forgive. What are you going to do to me?" "Nothing," Daniel replied. "I don't have to do anything. Morrison will destroy you himself when he realizes there's no escape. He'll trade everything he knows about you for a lighter sentence. The evidence will do the rest." As if on cue, his phone buzzed with breaking news. Morrison's victims file class action lawsuit. Former wives allege systematic fraud. Rebecca stared at the headline, reality finally crashing down. "I loved you once," she said softly. "When we were young, starting out. And I loved you." Daniel cut her off. "That's why your betrayal earned such a complete response." The security team he'd called arrived to escort her out. As she reached the door, Daniel spoke again. "The children are at my apartment. Don't try to contact them. They've seen Morrison's files, his notes about manipulating them. Let them process their anger without your interference." After she left, Maria returned with updates. "Morrison's trying to make deals with prosecutors, offering evidence against other doctors, board members, anyone he thinks might help him." "Let him," Daniel replied. "Each deal he makes, each person he betrays, just proves what he really is." The Office TV showed new footage, Morrison's previous wives arriving at the FBI office, each ready to testify. The women he'd charmed, robbed, and discarded now united in their desire for justice. "Sir," his secretary called, "the Bar Association representatives are here." "And sir?" "They're bringing the state attorney general." Daniel straightened his tie, a predator's smile crossing his face. "Perfect timing. Let's show them exactly who James Morrison really is." Chapter 8. Justice Served. The federal courthouse buzzed with anticipation as Morrison's arraignment approached. Reporters packed the hallways, cameras ready to capture the fall of Boston's once respected psychiatrist. Daniel sat in the front row, watching Morrison's expensive legal team whisper urgently to their client. The former doctor had aged years in custody, his polished appearance replaced by desperate eyes and nervous twitches. The prosecution has 97 witnesses, Maria murmured beside him. Former patients, ex-wives, hospital staff from California. They're saying it's the largest fraud case they've seen in decades. Judge Maxwell entered, his expression stern. The sight of his former friend in the defendant's box didn't soften his demeanor. If anything, it hardened it. James Morrison, you stand accused of multiple federal charges, including wire fraud, identity theft, practicing medicine without a license, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. How do you plead? Morrison's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client wishes to cooperate fully with the investigation. We have information about other parties involved. That wasn't the question. Judge Maxwell cut in sharply. How does your client plead? Guilty, Your Honor. Morrison's voice cracked. With the understanding that my cooperation will be considered in sentencing. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Daniel watched Rebecca, seated far from Morrison, crumple in her seat. Order, Maxwell demanded. Mr. Morrison, you understand that by pleading guilty, you admit to defrauding multiple victims across state lines? To practicing medicine without a license? To prescribing controlled substances illegally? Yes, Your Honor. And you're prepared to provide evidence against all co-conspirators? Including Mrs. Foster? Morrison glanced at Rebecca, then at his lawyers. Yes, Your Honor. I have documentation of all transactions, all planning sessions. Mrs. Foster was fully aware of our activities. Rebecca's cry of betrayal echoed through the courtroom. Daniel didn't turn to look at her. The proceedings continued, each charge detailed for the record. Morrison's crimes spanned decades, states, countless victims. The prosecution presented evidence of therapeutic abuse, financial manipulation, and calculated destruction of families. During a recess, Judge Catherine Blackwood approached Daniel. The Bar Association has formally apologized for accepting Morrison's testimony without proper verification. They want to make it public. Of course they do. Daniel's voice held cold amusement. Their reputation is at stake now. Did you tell them about the board member who accepted bribes? They're handling it internally, Catherine replied. There will be resignations, investigations. Am I firm? The partners want you back. After how you handled this, your reputation is stronger than ever. Daniel's phone buzzed, a message from Amy. Dad, can we talk about Mom? About what happens next? He showed the message to Catherine. The children are the real victims here. Morrison used them as weapons, and their mother let him do it. The therapy records? Catherine shuddered. I've never seen anything like it. Deliberate psychological manipulation of minors. Added to his charges, Daniel instructed. Make sure it's public. Other families need to know what he did. The afternoon session brought Rebecca's arraignment. She entered alone. No lawyer would risk their reputation defending her after Morrison's testimony. Mrs. Foster, Judge Maxwell began, you are charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, tax evasion, and accessory to practicing medicine without a license. How do you plead? Rebecca stood, her designer clothes hanging loose on her frame. Not guilty, Your Honor. I was manipulated, confused. Save it for trial, Maxwell cut in. Given the flight risk and the substantial evidence provided by Dr. Morrison, bail is denied. Mrs. Foster will be remanded to custody. As officers approached Rebecca, she turned to Daniel. Please, the children. Should have thought about them before you let Morrison experiment on their minds. He replied, loud enough for everyone to hear. The media frenzy outside the courthouse was intense. Reporters shouted questions. Mr. Foster, how did you uncover Morrison's fraud? Did you suspect your wife's involvement from the beginning? What about the other victims? Will your children testify? Daniel faced the cameras, his composure perfect. Justice has been served today, not just for my family, but for all of Morrison's victims. The evidence speaks for itself. That evening, he met Josh and Amy at his apartment. They sat in silence, processing the day's events. Mom really knew? Josh finally asked. About what he was doing to us in therapy? She signed the consent forms. Daniel replied gently. She helped him manipulate your memories, turn you against me. Amy wiped tears away. I keep trying to remember what's real and what they made us think was real. That's why you're seeing Dr. Matthews now, Daniel reminded her. She specializes in helping people recover from this kind of manipulation. Will Mom go to prison? Josh's voice was small. Yes, Daniel didn't soften the truth. The evidence is overwhelming. Morrison gave them everything: emails, recordings, financial records. She helped him hurt a lot of people. Amy stood suddenly. I want to testify. At her trial. People should know what they did to us. Me too, Josh added firmly. Daniel studied his children, seeing their strength emerging from the ashes of betrayal. Only if you're ready. Dr. Matthews thinks it might help with healing, but it's your choice. His phone buzzed with news alerts. Morrison pleads guilty in massive fraud case. Rebecca Foster denied bail. Evidence of conspiracy mounts. Medical board members resign as scandal grows. Victims of therapy fraud speak out. The twins read the headlines over his shoulder. It's really over? Amy asked. Almost, Daniel replied. Morrison will serve substantial time. Your mother. He paused. She made her choices. Now she faces the consequences. Josh picked up a framed photo. Their family from before Morrison, before the lies. Can we ever be okay again? After everything, we'll build something new, Daniel promised. Something stronger. Without lies, without manipulation. The buzzer rang. Sophia arriving with dinner and more case updates. The twins greeted her warmly, their initial skepticism long since replaced by genuine affection. As they ate, discussing the future rather than the past, Daniel watched his family beginning to heal. Morrison had tried to destroy them. Rebecca had helped him. But in the end, truth had prevailed, justice had been served, and the price of betrayal had been paid in full. Chapter 9. New Beginnings. The Cape Cod beach house gleamed under the September sun as guests arrived for what the invitations called a celebration of new beginnings. Daniel adjusted his tie, watching from the deck as Maria directed the final security sweep. Old habits? Sophia asked, joining him in a simple white dress that caught the breeze. Morrison may be in prison, but some of his former clients still blame me for exposing him, Daniel replied. Better safe than sorry. The guest list was small but significant. Judge Blackwood, several of Morrison's former victims who'd become allies, Karen Walsh, and most importantly, the twins. Now in college thanks to scholarships and recovered assets, Amy and Josh had grown stronger through adversity. Dad? Amy appeared in her bridesmaid's dress. Josh just got a message from Mom's lawyer. Daniel turned. What does she want now? She's trying to appeal again, Josh said, joining them. Says she has new evidence of Morrison's manipulation. Third appeal this year, Sophia noted. The courts won't even hear it. The evidence against her is too strong. Daniel watched his children's reactions. A year ago, such news would have devastated them. Now they absorbed it with mature understanding. She made her choices, Amy said firmly. Just like Dr. Matthews says, we can acknowledge the good memories without excusing the betrayal. The ceremony was simple but meaningful. Judge Maxwell, fully recovered from his own brush with Morrison's manipulation, officiated. The vows spoke of truth, trust, and rebuilding from ashes. During the reception, Maria approached with news. Morrison's latest deal was rejected. Prosecutors say he has nothing left to trade. How many years now? Daniel asked. 20 minimum, plus consecutive sentences for the financial crimes. Maria smiled grimly. He'll die in prison? Judge Blackwood joined them, champagne in hand. The Bar Association's new verification procedures are being adopted nationwide. Morrison's case is changing how we handle expert testimony. The foundation is helping with that, Sophia added. We're developing protocols to identify predatory therapy practices. The foundation had been Daniel's idea, using recovered assets to help other families torn apart by similar predators. Sophia ran it with fierce dedication, turning their shared pain into purpose. Josh approached with a tablet. Dad, you should see this. Mom's latest appeal. It's different. The legal document showed a complete confession. Rebecca had finally abandoned claims of manipulation, admitting her willing participation in Morrison's schemes. She detailed everything: the financial fraud, the calculated destruction of Daniel's reputation, the deliberate alienation of their children. She wants to make things right, Josh said quietly. Too late, but still. 10 years too late, Daniel corrected. Actions have consequences. She's serving hers. Amy joined them, reading over Josh's shoulder. She apologized to us too. Sent letters to our schools. Did you read them? Sophia asked gently. No need, Amy replied. We know who she is now, who she chose to be. The celebration continued as evening approached. Daniel watched his reconstructed family, the twins laughing with their college friends, Sophia discussing foundation plans with other survivors, Maria and Judge Maxwell debating legal reforms. From the ashes of betrayal, they'd built something stronger. Morrison had thought himself invincible. Rebecca had thought herself clever. But they'd learned the hard way. No one betrayed Daniel Foster without paying the full price. His phone buzzed one last time. A news alert. Former psychiatrist Morrison's final appeal denied. Life sentence upheld. Daniel showed the alert to Sophia. A wedding gift from the justice system. Better than China, she quipped, but her eyes held understanding. This was the final nail in Morrison's coffin. The twins read the news over their shoulders. He'll never hurt anyone else, Amy said with satisfaction. Neither will Mom, Josh added. Her confession means she's given up fighting the sentence. Karen Walsh joined their group, her face showing the peace of someone who'd finally seen justice served. Rebecca's publisher called. They want her to write a book about Morrison's manipulation techniques. Let me guess. Daniel's voice turned cold. She's planning to paint herself as another victim? Actually, no. Karen handed him a manuscript page. She's telling the whole truth. About her choices, her actions, everything. The proceeds will go to the foundation. Daniel passed the page to Sophia without reading it. Make sure it helps other families. That's all that matters now. As the reception wound down, Daniel found himself on the deck with his children. The future stretched before them. Amy's law school plans, Josh's medical school ambitions. They'd chosen paths of healing and justice, shaped by their experiences. You know, Amy said thoughtfully, in Dr. Matthews' therapy group, they talk about forgiveness, about letting go of anger. Daniel studied his daughter. And what do you think about that? I think, she replied carefully, that some actions don't deserve forgiveness. Understanding, maybe, but not forgiveness. Mom made her choices, Josh agreed. Morrison offered a path, but she chose to take it. To help him hurt us? Daniel nodded, proud of their clarity. Sometimes justice is more important than forgiveness. Sometimes holding people accountable is the only way to prevent more victims. Sophia called them inside for the final traditions. As they cut the cake, surrounded by survivors turned allies, Daniel reflected on the journey. He'd lost everything, his marriage, his children's trust, his reputation, but he'd rebuilt something stronger from the ruins. The foundation would protect other families. The legal reforms would prevent other Morrisons from practicing. His children had emerged stronger, wiser, ready to make their own marks on the world. Rebecca would serve her time, Morrison would die in prison, and their victims would heal. The price of betrayal had been paid in full, extracted by a man who'd turned loss into strength and vengeance into justice. Later that night, in their beachfront suite, Sophia showed Daniel the latest foundation report. 10 families saved this month. Morrison's techniques identified in 3 states. We're making a difference? Good, he replied simply. The man who'd lost everything had become a shield for others, turning personal vengeance into societal protection. A text from Maria lit up his phone. Rebecca's confession hits papers tomorrow. Your comment? Daniel typed his response. No comment needed. The truth speaks for itself. He looked out at the ocean, Sophia warm beside him, knowing his children slept safely nearby. Morrison had thought he could destroy Daniel Foster. Rebecca had thought she could remake him as a villain. Instead, they'd created something far more dangerous. A man with nothing left to lose and the skills to make them pay. In the end, justice had been served, not just for him, but for all their victims. The price of betrayal had been paid, and Daniel Foster's revenge had become a legacy of protection for others. The story would be told, not as one of victimhood, but of ruthless justice. Of a man who'd turned personal destruction into a weapon against predators. Of a family rebuilt stronger in the fires of betrayal. And somewhere in a federal prison, James Morrison would read about the wedding, about the foundation, about his techniques being exposed nationwide. And no, he'd chosen the wrong man to destroy. He'd created his own destruction by targeting Daniel Foster. The price of betrayal was always paid in full. Daniel Foster made sure of that. Epilogue. 10 years later, Daniel Foster stood at the podium of Harvard Law School's largest auditorium, addressing a packed crowd of law students and practicing attorneys. At 55, his presence commanded even more respect than in his younger years, his reputation now legendary in legal circles. The Morrison case changed how we view expert testimony, he explained, his voice carrying to the back rows. But more importantly, it exposed a fundamental flaw in our system's ability to protect vulnerable families. The Foster Richardson Foundation's annual conference had become the premier event for professionals dealing with psychological manipulation and fraud. Today's topic: predatory therapy, recognition, and prevention. In the front row, Amy Fosterchin took notes. At 27, she'd become a formidable prosecutor, specializing in cases involving therapeutic abuse. Her recent marriage to Michael Chun, son of Daniel's former partner Thomas Chun, had bridged old wounds and strengthened family alliances. Josh, now Dr. Joshua Foster, sat beside her. His psychiatric practice focused on helping victims of manipulation recover, his own experience driving his dedication to ethical treatment. His recent paper on detecting forced memory implantation had revolutionized the field. "Dad's really hitting hard today," Amy whispered to her brother. "Morrison's death in prison last month has him fired up," Josh replied quietly. "Brings everything back." The news of James Morrison's death had made headlines, but not for the reasons anyone expected. His final confession, released posthumously, revealed an even deeper network of fraud than originally uncovered. New victims were still coming forward. After the lecture, Daniel met his children in his office at Foster, Richardson and Associates, now Boston's largest firm specializing in fraud and malpractice cases. "The medical board wants to implement your new screening protocols nationwide," Amy announced, dropping a thick proposal on his desk. "They're calling it the Foster Protocol. Sophia's already reviewing the documentation," Daniel replied, mentioning his wife of 9 years. "The foundation won't endorse anything unless it's airtight." The Foster Richardson Foundation had grown beyond anyone's expectations. Operating in 12 countries, it had helped expose hundreds of predatory therapists and reunited countless families. Sophia's leadership had transformed their personal victory into a global mission. Speaking of protocols, Josh added, Karen Walsh's rehabilitation program is showing amazing results. 87% success rate in helping victims rebuild family bonds. Karen had turned her experience into expertise, working with the foundation to develop recovery programs for families torn apart by manipulation. Her insight into Rebecca's tactics had proven invaluable in identifying similar cases. Maria called. Daniel changed the subject. She's retiring from the force. Wants to work full-time for the Foundation's investigative unit. Detective Maria Ramirez had never stopped fighting predators like Morrison. Her network of investigators had become the Foundation's most effective tool in exposing fraud. "Did you hear about Mom's latest book?" Amy asked carefully. Rebecca's prison writings had become unexpected tools in fighting manipulation. Her detailed confessions of helping Morrison, published under the Foundation's oversight, served as warning signs for other potential victims. She'd served 8 years before being released on parole, now living quietly in Arizona, barred from contact with Morrison's victims. "For weeks on the bestseller list," Daniel nodded. "The Foundation's using the proceeds to fund scholarships for victims' families." The door opened as Sophia entered, her forensic accounting skills now focused on preventing rather than exposing fraud. The Singapore team found another Morrison copycat, using almost identical financial patterns. "Send everything to Judge Maxwell," Daniel instructed. "His international task force specializes in these cases now." Judge Maxwell had turned his own brush with Morrison's manipulation into a crusade. His task force had become the leading authority on prosecuting therapy-related fraud across borders. Judge Blackwood called, Sophia added. The Bar Association wants you to head the new ethics committee. Catherine Blackwood had retired from the bench, but remained active in legal reform. Her public acknowledgement of Morrison's manipulation had inspired other judges to examine their own biases. Thomas Chin's firm wants to partner on the West Coast expansion, Amy mentioned. Michael says his father feels it's time to fully reconcile. Daniel considered this. Thomas's initial abandonment during the Morrison crisis had cut deep, but time and truth had healed many wounds. Set up the meeting. Josh checked his phone. My evening group therapy session includes 3 former Morrison victims. They specifically requested the Foundation's program. How are they progressing? Sophia asked. Better, since Rebecca's latest book came out. Seeing her admit everything, explain how she helped Morrison manipulate people. It helps them understand they're not alone. Daniel moved to the window, studying the city he'd nearly lost. Foster Tower now dominated the Boston skyline, housing both the firm and the Foundation. A visible reminder that truth, though delayed, ultimately prevails. The Thompson case files are ready for review, Sophia said, referring to their latest investigation. Same pattern. Respected therapist, wealthy clients, suspicious financial transfers. Another Morrison wannabe? Amy asked. They never learn. Daniel's voice carried the same steel that had brought down Morrison. Send me everything. These predators think Morrison's techniques died with him. That's why the Foundation matters, Josh noted. We're not just fighting individual cases anymore. We're changing the whole system. The Foster Protocol had already prevented dozens of potential Morrison-style predators from obtaining licenses. The Foundation's financial tracking systems flagged suspicious patterns before victims lost everything. The healing programs helped families rebuild. Michael wants to join the Foundation's legal team, Amy mentioned. Says corporate law feels empty after seeing our work. Daniel nodded approval. The Foundation attracted the best talent, professionals who understood the importance of their mission. Many, like Michael, had witnessed the damage predatory therapy could cause. Governor's office called. Sophia checked her messages. They want to make the Foster Protocol state law. Required screening for all mental health professionals. Draft the proposal, Daniel instructed. Get Judge Blackwood's input on the legal framework. A notification lit up all their phones simultaneously. Breaking news about Morrison's posthumous confession triggering new investigations. 3 more therapists exposed, Amy read. All using Morrison's techniques. All targeting wealthy families. The Foundation's hotline is lighting up, Sophia added. Victims recognizing the pattern from Rebecca's books. Daniel absorbed this, seeing how their personal tragedy had evolved into a shield protecting others. Morrison had tried to destroy him, but had instead created something far more powerful, a network dedicated to preventing similar destruction. Dr. Matthews is retiring. Josh changed subjects, mentioning the therapist who'd helped them recover. Wants to train Foundation counselors in her techniques. Dr. Sarah Matthews had become the Foundation's leading expert in recovery therapy. Her methods, combined with Josh's research, had set new standards for ethical treatment. The UCLA Medical School wants to add our case studies to their ethics curriculum, Amy noted. They're calling Morrison the perfect example of how therapy becomes weapon. What about the Harvard proposal? Sophia asked. Full fellowship program, Daniel confirmed, training lawyers and therapists together to recognize manipulation patterns. First class starts next fall. The Foundation's educational initiatives had expanded beyond professional training. Their high school program taught students to recognize manipulation tactics. Their family workshops helped parents protect their children from predatory influences. 10 years, Amy mused. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like another life, Josh agreed. Daniel studied his children, successful, strong, survivors who'd turned trauma into purpose. Morrison had tried to destroy their family. Rebecca had helped him. Instead, they created something unbreakable. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Foster? The international team is ready for the video conference. Singapore branch has updates on the Thompson investigation. Put them through to the main conference room, Daniel instructed. As they moved to the conference room, Amy checked her prosecution files. 6 more cases this month, all using Morrison's techniques. But none succeeding, Josh pointed out. The Foundation catches them too quickly now. The massive screen lit up with faces from around the world. Foundation teams fighting the same battle on different fronts. Daniel surveyed them with satisfaction. Morrison had thought himself a master manipulator, but his legacy was the creation of a worldwide network dedicated to stopping others like him. Updates from each region, Daniel commanded. Let's make sure no other family goes through what we did. As the reports began, he glanced at his family. Sophia, his partner in both justice and life. Amy and Josh, who transformed their pain into power to help others. The Foundation team, dedicated to their mission of protection and prevention. Morrison had died in prison, his techniques exposed and condemned. Rebecca lived in exile, her confessions serving as warnings to others. Their attempt to destroy Daniel Foster had instead created an unstoppable force for justice. The price of betrayal had been paid in full, but the legacy of that payment continued to protect families around the world. In the end, Daniel Foster hadn't just gotten revenge, he'd turned it into redemption for countless others. The Foundation's motto, displayed prominently in every office, summed it up perfectly, from personal justice to global protection. The story of one family's devastation had become a worldwide shield against manipulation and fraud. As Daniel began the international briefing, he reflected on the decade's journey. Morrison had tried to write him as a villain. Rebecca had tried to erase him as a father. Instead, they'd helped create his greatest role, protector of other families, guardian against predators like themselves. The price of betrayal remained the same, absolute and unavoidable. But now that price served a greater purpose, funding the protection of future victims and the exposure of would-be Morrisons. Daniel Foster's revenge had become his redemption, and through the Foundation, that redemption would continue protecting families long after Morrison's techniques were forgotten, replaced by the Foster Protocol's shield of justice and truth. The legacy of betrayal had become a legacy of protection, and that, Daniel knew, was the greatest victory of all. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.